Welcome everybody to the fifth and final webinar in the Jare Trading Psychology Masterclass. Thank you guys so much for joining us today, whether you're live or watching the recording. It's great to have you here, and we're going to close it out strong as we started that momentum with the final countdown there. So first of all, a few procedural items as usual. Please leave all questions down below in the Q&A section. There's already some popping in here that just kind of helps keep everything organized. And for any kind of just chat, feedback, answering questions that Jared asks, you can leave that down below in the chat, and you can also talk amongst yourselves as well. And we highly encourage a lot of interaction. That's what we love. So definitely go ahead and do that. Additionally, because somebody always asks, this is being recorded, so feel free to step away. If you need to, you can come back, rewatch the recording as many times as you wish. It'll be embedded in the course either later tomorrow or the day after that. I'll get it up as soon as I can. With that, let's go ahead and finish this strong. And it's been great to be a part of this, and I hope this has been extremely valuable for you all. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Jared.
All right. Thanks, Richard. Good to see everybody again for the final time. Oh, God. I can't believe it's actually coming to a close today. We work on something for as long as I have with this. It's kind of crazy. So, 5 months, 6 months in the making for us. We started this in January. Here we are. I really do appreciate all the hard work you've put in. I know many of you were overwhelmed at the start here. This amount of content that I kind of threw at you was purposeful, right? So that we could all kind of get on the same page quickly, and you grinded through it. And there's been kind of a steady downtrend of that feeling and a steady uptrend of progress and success and fine tuning. And it's clear that there's a lot of progression here that we can kind of build on and kind of launch you into the future, right? And so I do think that this has kind of matched my client experience with, my work with one-on-one clients, right? Working very intensively over an 8-week period like this, right? The arc that many of you have gone through is very, very similar, which gives me a lot of confidence that you will be able to continue to make progress on your own as you move forward here. And so that step forward, like what do you do after today, is really kind of the bulk of what we're going to try to accomplish today. We may be in a bit of a fine-tuning mode, but that does not mean that our job is done, right? The bulk of what we're going to do today is going to be, towards that. And the heavy lifting, for the most part, has been done already, right? You've constructed a strategy using my system. That system is working. That strategy is working. Okay, sure. For some of you more than others, but that's okay, right? Everybody's in a different spot. But the fact is that most of you have made progress already, and that is fantastic. It's a testament to your work, right? And it's a testament to what you can continue to use as you move forward here. All right. So again, I'm going to get to some of your submissions, your questions, and then focus a bit more on the application of the strategy. But we're going to do what you know is coming. Today's test. All right. So Richard has I'm going to put in the link here to today's survey, today's quiz. As always, you've got 90 seconds to complete it. Okay. It's a bit, I'll admit, a bit more of a mixed bag of questions today. So we'll get to see how you do and have a good conversation as a result of it. So 90 seconds on the clock, go to it, see what you got. It's your final test. Okay, here we go. What value does a consistent routine provide? The answer is all of the above, right? A little bit of a tricky one, right? Gives you an opportunity to gauge your mental and emotional state before you trade. Okay, that is, I think, one of the biggest keys. Allows you to stay sharp for longer periods during the trading day. Why? Well, the more likely you are to be in your A game, the more likely you are also to be prepared to address any issues that may keep you from being at your best. It helps you to evaluate your performance, capture relevant information, and move on with your life. So there we're talking about cool down. Right. What are the chances that you'll be consistent at effectively taking breaks during the trading day? I love the honesty here for those that selected 0 and 20%. All right. So majority of you are, kind of in that 50-50 camp or 80% or higher. So again, why is it important to take breaks? Because you're looking at almost like kind of an expected value calculation here, right? So if you're going to be trading at a lower level, more likely to make some small mistakes or miss some opportunities, you actually might get paid a decent amount of money to take those breaks. I know it feels like that's not the case because anytime you're away from the desk, you might miss some opportunities. And that's kind of just a bit of the variance that you're throwing in here. But on a whole, if you are on average at a trading at a higher level, you should be making more money long term. Not to mention, kind of giving yourself an opportunity to avoid burnout as well. All right. What is one reason goal setting is important? Yes, the correct answer is narrows your focus and makes your motivation more stable. Determines how much money you'll make this year so you can create a budget. Yeah, that one was a little bit of a tricky one. I'd say that was certainly the trickiest one that did trip up one person. No, I mean, you don't know how much money you're going to make in 1 year. I mean, you don't have full control over your results. So that's not the real purpose of goal setting. The real purpose of goal setting, you can set a target, right? You can do everything in your power to achieve that target, but you cannot count on that money, certainly when you're setting that as a target. What is one benefit of planning for the problems you likely will face when trying to achieve your goals? Okay, again, a bit of a tricky one here. The answer is both A and C. So thinking about your problems ensures they won't be a problem. Very, very fine line. So that was probably the trickiest question here today. No, it's not all. It's not the answer is not all the above, because that one you can't know for sure that that those problems won't be there. I mean, planning for them, preparing for them, increases the likelihood that you're going to be able to navigate them better. But I mean, there's a lot of things that you can't fully know. One of which is that you will be able to handle something, into the future. Right? You can do your best, but you can't guarantee it. All right, scenario here. Okay, so again, kind of the honesty is a big one here. You've worked really hard on your mental game over the last 2 months, made some progress. Are you committed to doing the work on your mental game consistently, even when it's hard, until you reach resolution? So glad there was no answers here. I suppose anybody that showed up to this last one, you all are the most committed of the bunch, or at least proving that you have the commitment plus the ability to show up here live. So yeah, not 100% sure that how you'll get there. That's fine, right? I mean, there is uncertainty to all this. So that kind of honesty is great. You know yourself, and you are sure that you'll fall off at some point. That problem we will get to later on in the webinar today as we address some of the kind of future problems that are likely to occur and the reasons why those problems might occur. All right, so let's just kind of cover what we're going to do today, as I've kind of alluded to already. So I'm going to, again, prioritize a lot of the questions that were submitted in advance, as well as the questions that were posted here. We're probably going to go a little bit longer today just to make sure that all of your questions are answered. I don't want to leave anything hanging. And then I'm also going to review some examples of your goals and plan worksheet, which was the new document from last time. And, I think I'm very, very happy that there was a lot of good feedback. Many of you were enjoying doing it. You could see the immediate value for it. It wasn't quite as hard as some of the other stuff, right? Goals oftentimes are the things that you've thought about many times before. And so it was just about, kind of formatting it in a way and thinking about different dimensions of your goals and plan that you maybe not have always thought about, and also the benefit of actually writing it down, right? And, I think one of the things about goals is that we often forget that you actually have to learn them sometimes, right? You have to kind of train your mind to be more closely connected to them on a day-to-day basis to help really drive that motivation and drive that focus. And I'll also kind of review a handful of some of the other documents as well. But like I said, my focus is more on these kind of bottom three and really getting you set up for continued progress beyond this course, right? Just like my one-on-one work, my main motivation is to teach you how to fish. I'm not just going to just hand you fish and not allow you to understand how to make progress on your own. I don't want you to have to rely on me. I want you to be able to learn how to rely on yourself. And many of you are being able to do that now. Those of you who aren't there yet, I promise if you keep working, you will get there. Okay. So I want you to be well prepared to understand the challenges that you're going to face, right? And that's something that I often don't have the chance to do with my one-on-one clients, right? We don't have an hour to spend talking about what issues they're going to experience, right? What ends up happening is we kind of come up with a handful of them, and then they're just going to come back at some point in the future when they run into them. But we're not going to have that opportunity. So I'm going to spend, a good chunk of time making sure that you're well prepared. All right. And as I've said many, many times, you will have the recording. Richard has said it many times as well. Come back to this. The system is not going to change, right? The tools that you're going to use are not going to change. However, you can find ways to mold them and adapt to your own unique personality and your own unique needs, right? There's a lot of ways to apply this stuff. There's basic fundamentals that need to be there, But the application, I've been really impressed with a lot of the creativity and the unique ways that you all have kind of brought the system to life for yourself. So continue to do that. Okay. Evaluating progress is going to be one of the main topics. I think it's super important to understand and recognize when you are or are not making progress, learning how to spot some of the future issues that come up quickly. Some of the more common ones will not be a surprise to you. And of course, bit of an aspirational nod. We're going to look at ways to move your A game forward. Right? We spent a lot of time in this series focusing on the back end of your range, trying to eliminate the biggest mistakes and problems in your trading. But you can also push that A game higher. Right? And I want to give you some ideas on how to do that. All right. So let's get to some questions. And the questions are really going to kind of frame how I review some of the materials that were sent in. Okay. So the first question is this. Getting from data collection to the mental hand history and all the supporting work in between takes time and work, and time is a finite resource. I certainly do not want to skip out on the work required, but in certain situations, I feel like a quick fix would be more appropriate to get the logic confirmation. Can you recommend an abbreviated path for these situations? If I had it, I would have sold it to you. If I had it, I would have given it to you. I think the way we can think about this is that the overall system and strategy, as you get deeper into it, as you get more refined with it, as you learn the elements of it better, right? It should take less and less time to apply it. So what's going to happen, over the next, few months or so is that your ability to, complete a mental hand history and know that you even should do that. Your ability to inject logic in the moment because you saw signs of FOMO is going to increase rapidly, and it's going to feel like a quick fix at that point. And so it becomes kind of like those overnight successes that took 20 years to, in the making, but nobody ever saw those 20 years of hard work. They just saw the end results of this person seemingly coming out of nowhere. Okay. I'm not saying that it's going to take you years to create that overnight quick fix, but I am saying that if there was a quick fix, I promise you, I would have already provided it. There's just work that has to get put in to internalize the knowledge, the perspective, the tools, the use of them. And it's kind of like trading, right? You just can't find shortcuts here. And if you do and they work, sometimes that's actually false feedback that you don't want. That's going to kind of bite you in the ass in the future. All right. So some questions here about goals and planning, right? So we're going to answer a couple questions and then get to some examples of your worksheets. Okay, what is your take on doing a goals and plan template every morning for my daily goals, or do you prefer another template? So I like the idea of it, right? You're kind of building on that point I made last time about how you don't want your routine to become routine. And yes, that is an important thing, right? You want to keep the sharpness there. So I like the idea. My only concern here is that if you are kind of reinventing the wheel every day, right, where every day you've got new goals that are not really connected to even your kind of near term, like weekly, monthly goals, I think you're just going to end up feeling like you're kind of like a ping pong ball, just kind of going in lots of different directions, every day, and not really having some coherence in working towards, I think, your bigger goals in just a more kind of pragmatic, systematic way. So for me, I like looking at we don't really talk about time period with your goals, and I don't think that was an essential element. Okay, but you do need to kind of add in some idea, right, that is longer than like a week here, right? So you could have goals for a week, you'd have goals for a month, quarter, yearly, right? And so I would do that. And then daily, if you want to kind of choose, kind of the points that you want to make sure that you're highlighting and then write it down each day, cool. If you want to test yourself to see if you remember it, and so you're going to kind of force yourself to write it down every day, that's cool. Right? That's going to help you to kind of deeply internalize your goals, and that will drive your motivation and focus in more profound ways. But I do not suggest, coming up with new things every day. It's going to drive yourself crazy, and you're not going to be as efficient as you want. Should my problem be specific to the goals on the worksheet, or can they expand a little bit further? Right. So here we're talking about kind of the problems that are most likely to derail you or cause you to fail. And so, there was one example of a worksheet that came in that just had 10 plus process goals, 10 plus problems. And that I think is just too much. So should your problems be specific to the ones in the worksheet? Yes. they can include other ones that are not. Okay. And so you can kind of expand the scope of your mind kind of beyond it. But yeah, I think for the most part, you want to have your biggest problems reflected here, right? And so if they start to expand out in number where they're getting to like 5 or 10, it's just too much for you to think about at one time. Right? We go back to the space limitations of the brain, right? You can only think about so much at one time. And so if you are forcibly adding lots of new goals to have to keep in your mind, well, it's actually going to take away from your trading. It's going to take away from your focus, right? So you want to be prepared, but not overwhelmed. All right. So I'm going to review a couple of the worksheets that have come in just to give you all some perspective here and feedback on them. Okay. So this first one here, we're going to look at some of the result goals. And number one, be a proactive trader. Number two, don't get pushed around by the market, but execute your strategy at any time. So whenever I see a statement like that, it makes me a little concerned, right? And my mind immediately goes to anytime there's some kind of negative language, my mind will always kind of just flip it to try to describe what the problem is that's trying to be solved. So I feel like I get pushed around by the market and I need to execute my strategy at any time. So part of me gets a little bit concerned here because I don't think you want to be forcing a strategy in markets that are not necessarily an opportune for you. And Richard, maybe you could kind of jump in here and give your perspective, because I do feel like there's a bit of a kind of a trading connection here that you'd be better served in answering.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, that language to me about getting pushed around by the market, that kind of assumes like you can fight back against the market. And to me, that's not quite the right way to frame it. I kind of view the market as this objective thing of what will happen, kind of will happen, and we're kind of along for the ride. And unless you're managing, millions, billions of dollars, we can't really impact the actual price action, depending on liquidity, of course. And absolutely right, Jared. I would say, whatever strategy you're employing, day trading, swing trading, position trading, there's going to be kind of an optimal time and market environment for that. And then there's going to be times where you want to step back, be not quite as exposed, not quite as forcing as much as you can, because, it's just not the right time for that strategy. And you have to kind of realize that, and that awareness is really important. So that's kind of what I would add about that result goal.
Yeah, that's great. And so then if we look at like, all right, well, there are times where I feel like I'm getting pushed around by the market. Well, that's probably a psychological issue, right? Something you got to kind of peel back. Is it a confidence thing? Right? Is it a fear thing? What's kind of going on there? I would do a mental hand history and then maybe, kind of readapt it to either your process goals or your problems here. So overall, again, I think this is well done. We look at some of the process goals. Consistency is key. Do your weekly and daily preparations. Have a daily routine executed during the week and make them your highest priorities. We get to this third one. Make sure that you can adhere to your routines as best as possible for as long as possible. So here we've got, number one, consistency is key. Do your weekly and daily preparations. Number two, have your daily routines executed. It's already kind of like talked about there. And so when I look at then the how, take a day off on the weekend and allow yourself some rest to reset for the next week. Take care of your mental state, journaling. So there's a great how in there. I think the goal here is probably more about burnout avoidance, right? Like, so maybe the goal there is be more aware of the sort of subtle signs of burnout, right? Because your routines might start to suffer as a result of that. So I think you're kind of moving in that direction, but I would just be a bit more clear that is what you're kind of aspiring towards. All right. And then if we look at the problems, so things from everyday life will interfere with your routines and get you out of the flow and rhythm. And then we look at the plan, right? Anticipate that this will happen and know when it does. It's not a big deal. It just make sure to get back to your routines as quick as possible. So there's just a little bit of kind of vagueness in here. Things from everyday life will interfere with your routines. Anticipate that will happen. I actually think you can just start a list, like just be really, really practical here, right? What things from everyday life are going to affect your routines? It's not like infinite, right? There are a finite number of things that are most likely to affect you. So even if you don't know what they are yet, your plan could be have a list of what those things are and retroactively start to add them, and then make sure you go back to your routines as quick as possible when you recognize that you're thrown off. Okay. Number two, I will make mistakes that I shouldn't do anymore and will deviate from my strategy and perfect execution. So whenever I see that word shouldn't in a problem like that, it makes me worried, right, that your expectations are a bit too high, right? That this is a problem that you haven't yet been able to quite conquer yet. You haven't been able to either map well enough or understand the root cause of well enough or come up with correct. Like there's just something that's still a bit off here. So, right, your plan here, establish circuit breakers, which is kind of like, disrupting momentum to prevent you from getting caught up in negative spirals. So like the plan is good. I just think you're almost kind of defining this in a way that I think could be cleaned up. So something more to the effect of like, I will make mistakes that I wish I didn't do anymore, but will, or like just be more, kind of accepting that they're still going to happen versus, with that expectation there. My worry is that you're just going to be a little bit more kind of overreactive to it. Okay. And then the last one, so we look into the plan. Right. Sorry. So the problem is I lose my flow and start to doubt myself. And the plan is don't beat yourself up for making mistakes. It's human and normal. It's kind of like an injecting logic paragraph. So we're getting a little fuzzy here between these things, right? Your plan is to ensure that you recognize the signs that you're doubting yourself and you disrupt that momentum and you inject logic. And it's whether it's during the trading day or after, like you're being aggressive at trying to correct it. That's the plan. This injecting logic statement is one that you want to be internalizing, one that you want to be reviewing regularly as part of your preparation, add it to your routine. Okay. So there were a couple examples here where the plan did feel like injecting logic, like you were kind of motivating yourself and talking to yourself versus it being kind of more practical and pragmatic. All right. I want to see if there's any questions coming in for things that we've been talking about. So don't go too far. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, I think those are all things I can get to later. All right. Next one here. So this is kind of a unique version. You kind of look at the main structure is all the same, but then you can see under the process goals, they've added this element of why, right? So effectively doing the same thing we did with the results goals, adding in that extra element to create a little bit of potency behind the desire, in this case, to not enter trades without proper confirmation, because being patient will minimize the number of times I have to stop out and preserve buying power, right? And so that extra bit of potency, I think, is really smart to add, sir. So well done. Anybody wants to kind of follow along here? I'm fully on board with that. Okay, so I don't have a ton of feedback here. I think these are well done, very clear. But we start to look at the problems I will likely face. Okay, and I think what's here is, again, kind of what I was just talking about. There's a lot of problems that are more emotionally based. So there's fear and lack of confidence, fear and greed, right? Exiting trades out of boredom. And so the plan is really just effectively like injecting logic, right? Slow down, reanalyze my charts and on-screen setups, accept to be wrong and take small loss on every trade before I enter. I would just like to see a bit more robustness around it. I just don't know that it's going to be as simple to correct those problems as is listed here. Okay, so next one. Yeah, so main reason I was kind of calling out this one is that it's short, right? There's not, you can see in comparison, kind of just less text. So you don't need to have an elaborate plan, goals, right? It just needs to be accurate for yourself. What I will say here, which I think was really good in terms of like problems you will likely face. So we look at number 1 was time and energy. Number 2 was career commitment. Number 3, I will be getting married soon. So first off, congratulations. Very exciting. Number 2, I think it's actually kind of cool, right, that you're recognizing the potential of getting married, buying a house, starting a family as being a potential problem, right? So I don't know if you've ever heard of like kind of the top 5 stressors, that exist in life. It's, birth and death. It's divorce, buying a house, moving, starting new jobs, like the big events in life where, there's a big kind of disruption. There's a lot of emotional volatility, sometimes positive, involved. And, it can be easy to let that stuff kind of simmer in the background and disrupt you. I've had many clients who have both moved. One client was kind of moving from California to Chicago. Yeah, just not really thinking it's a big deal, trading as they're traveling across country. I mean, it's just another client who had a baby 2 weeks later, is kind of back full time, really underappreciating how much their mind had degraded from only getting 4.5 hours of sleep, just the emotional turmoil that was kind of involved. And so, yeah, like in those times, it's going to be really easy to regress. It's going to be really easy for those old problems to come out. Even if you've made significant progress, even if you feel like there's been some resolution there, you haven't been tested yet to this extent where your personal issues are affecting you to this degree. So yeah, it is important. I think I'm calling this out because it was well done here. Now you got to make sure that you're just more practical and pragmatic when that stuff does occur. All right. This next one, I'm not going to read through all of it, but there's some things in here that are kind of intense. And I say intense, which could be a good thing. Okay. So sometimes goals can be a little bit flat, and I'm going to get to an example of one. And the next slide that kind of has this. This has just a vibe of intensity. You can feel kind of the power with which they are kind of communicating what they want and how they're going to get it, right? So become a consistent, profitable trader, establish your routines, establishing a routine for mental pre-market warm-up. I'm a person who loves to be in control and struggles otherwise. As long as this is the case, I can preserve the conviction in my system or my mental capital this way, right? So we start to get here into, let's see, where is it? Number 2, right? Why these goals matter. Although I realize it's important to do this, every cell in my body resists every day. For this reason, I need a mandatory routine or daily journaling plan. So now we start to worry that the intensity is trying to suppress and step on underlying issues. Now, the bulk of this course, both those masterclass, has been focused on kind of the in-game, during trading hour issues that occur, your big trading mistakes, and trying to correct those. But what happens when the issues lie in things around trading, like your routines and your inability to actually adhere to them? You apply the system to the same stuff. It doesn't matter when these things occur. If there is a problem that you think is affecting your performance, you can use the system to correct you. So what I would strongly urge you to do here is, if you are not adhering to your routines, you figure out why. Right? Force is not going to get it done long term. It's going to take too much energy, A, which you're going to have to burn actually doing it, which is then going to leave you less energy for trading. But B, there's just going to be times where you're going to mess up, and what's going to be the reaction? There's probably going to be a lot of anger. And then how much of that anger is then going to carry over too? So you got to dig a bit deeper here. Okay. Your body resists every day. Well, there's a reason for it. Why is that? Is it actually to do with, burnout, right? Your energy is low and you're just kind of forcing yourself, feet in the fire when you've already been burned too much. Is it maybe like a procrastination, laziness, goal issue? You got too many things you're trying to do. Right? There are reasons for it. They're reasonable. You just got to figure out what those are. Okay. So there's a couple other examples in this one where there is that kind of force, and we want to take those steps back to understand what's going on. All right. So now this is the example where I think the language in the first goal could be tightened up here a little bit. So result goal, keep improving my daily and weekly trading routines and keep learning every day. So it really, to me, is just the word keep. And I'm being maybe a little bit nitpicky here. But for me, when we're talking about like what we want, you've got to be very convicted around it. So the word keep to me just feels a little soft, right? I'd rather say improve my daily and weekly trading routines and learn every day. You can just hear there's just a little bit more, kind of conviction behind that. It's not just the way that I'm saying it. It's that word keep feels soft. And I do pay very close attention to language, not because of the actual words and being nitpicky on the words. It's more about the intent. And so it suggests to me that this person has a little bit of weakness, maybe even a little bit of confidence issues, right? That are, kind of not allowing you to go after what you want with the level of intensity that really needs to be there. So just a couple other things here. Overall, I think this is very good. Number 3 in the result goal, add the mental game system to my current routines so I can keep evolving my psychological game as a trader. To me, that kind of feels like a task. I mean, how long is it going to take to actually do this, right? So if it's not a task and that wasn't your intent here, then maybe what we'd say is like, create mastery, create a high level of competency for the mental game system so that I can apply it to my routines and keep evolving my psychological game. Just, again, make it a bit more robust about what you're trying to do with this. All right, and then we look at the process goals. Learn to scale up correctively using progressive exposure, only trade AAA setups, journaling all my feelings, and find each problem's root. So good stuff overall. The only suggestion I would make here is that only trade AAA setups kind of feels like a result goal. Kind of top line, this is what I want. And if you make it a result goal, then maybe the how actually becomes the process goal. Like, stick to my rules and keep improving them, make them clearer, and then you figure out how you're actually going to stick to your goals. Because I think that would be a more interesting thing to have here. Because stick to your rules and only trade those setups. Like, yeah, I mean, great in theory. How are you going to actually do it? Okay, so again, you can always. Looking at goals is kind of like what I've talked about with the mental man industry, where you kind of can dig down into the hows and the whys, and you can always find kind of more layers here. Don't drive yourself crazy, right? Don't dig so deep that you kind of lose sight of where you're actually digging, right? What the purpose of this is for. It's just to drive your motivation and focus so you're doing the things that are moving you towards your goals, every day. All right. One last one here. And yeah, I would say this is probably the best one I saw in terms of clarity, in terms of precision about what was being expressed. And I'm not saying that as a denigration for anybody else, more so as one that, you all can kind of look at as something just to learn a bit more of how you can kind of lay these things out. The first problem here, so you look at the problems you likely face. Burnout from being so rigid with all my mental and market routines. I think that's a smart thing to have called out, right? You can be doing everything right and burn out because it takes so much energy for you to make progress. Progress is hard. All of you are burning more energy day to day because of how hard you're working to try to improve yourselves. So yeah, you are going to be a bit more likely to burn out, which is why the necessity to take those breaks during the trading day become higher too. I gave this analogy to a client the other day. He was kind of struggling, making some progress, right? And then a little bit of overconfidence comes in, gets undercut. The desire to kind of get in there and fight wasn't really there afterwards because he kind of felt like he, was just kind of lost a little bit of momentum. But what was helpful was kind of treating the trading day like a battle for him. And I kind of shared the beginning of Braveheart, right? The movie Braveheart. William Wallace wins a couple battles, right? But he is bloodied. Sword is whatever, right? I mean, you can be in a battle and win, and yet you're not going to just go fight another one because you've got to sharpen your sword again. You got to sharpen your tools. You got to clean yourself off. Because if you just go right back in, the risk of you actually dying gets higher, right? So it's kind of that way with trading, right? You can survive the battle of the market, the battle against your own issues day to day, and yet still be weakened and less prepared and more likely to burn out. Okay. So you're not going to just go back in and fight without really, understanding or just really just kind of clean yourself up, healing a bit. So, when does that occur, right? You're in the gym, you are ripping muscle fiber. Okay. You're not actually growing bigger muscles when you're in the gym. You're ripping muscle fiber and you are pushing your body, indicating what you want it to be able to do. It's when you rest that muscle fiber heals and grows greater capacity. So the same is true here too. Okay. All right. Let me get to a couple questions before we dive into this one. All right. So she was asking, what is the reason for exiting early with a decent profit mindset? Is it FOMO? For the profit or fearing losing? It's not happening when there's a low risk loss. Is there any connection to confirmation bias, perfectionism, fixed mindset with overtrading, revenge trading? And I guess it's a separate question. Okay. So exiting early is not FOMO, at least not in my experience, right? The fear of missing out on an opportunity would, I think, keep you in the trade, not get you out. So it's much more likely to be a fear of losing or even a hatred of losing, right? Sometimes you exit early because if it were to retrace and stop you out, or retrace and even you get yourself out as a scratch, whatever it is, you are losing that kind of unrealized money, which feels realized in your mind, and you hate that scenario. So that's kind of much more of what I would suggest there. Sometimes I forget to go to the map and fall off the elephant. I know this is normal. We are new to the system. What steps can we take to best ensure we stay true to the system and build this muscle memory? The number one thing is to not be critical of yourself for it, right? And so I think some people kind of teeter this line between being too soft and allowing yourself to fail too easily because you're just not motivated or pushing yourself as hard. But the self-criticism for when you fall off, unless it just creates that little kick in the ass to get you moving again and doesn't do anything more than that, then the self-criticism gets excessive and will slow down your ability to get back on the horse or on the elephant, whatever you want to call it. So for me, I think the best way to stay true to the system is have it organized, be well prepared, go through some kind of preparation. And yeah, right, you are going to forget to go to it in real time, and that's fine, but you're going to kind of keep at it. Now, one thing that could be helpful as well is doing some kind of tracking. So you could just do a little kind of scratch note, like a prisoner in a, keep track of how many days are there, like, little 4 scratches and a line across. As you're in the trading day, just like marking down every time that you see something and you go to the map. And then at the end of the day, you could go look back and see the number of times that you've done that. And B, think about how many times you probably should have but didn't. Right? And then you can kind of see a differential in how much you're checking, because we don't want to necessarily see that number that you're checking the map increase. We want to see a decrease in the number of times you should have and the number of times you did. Right? We want that to be ideally the same number. All right, Ron's asking regarding the Yerkes-Dodson law. So for those, remember, that's the kind of the performance stress curve that is the relationship between performance and emotion or stress. Makes very good intuitive sense. It doesn't have a lot of empirical validation. Have you found it to have good results with your private clients? I'm not sure where you're questioning the empirical validation. Everything I've seen, it's been around for 100+ years. And yeah, I don't. So yes, I've seen it have very good results with clients. It's really not about, right, the law, having the application. It's like, does it give you the frame of reference to understand the necessity to catch those emotions early before that decline happens, or the decline on the side where you don't have enough stress, you don't have enough energy, you're getting lazy, procrastinating, bored, etc. Right? That's really the most important thing. It's just kind of providing the evidence and the necessity to do that. Because if you wait, the longer you wait, the harder it is for you to get back to the top of that curve. What suggestions would you have for swing traders or less active traders? I have found that sticking to a daily routine, no matter the market conditions, helps. Any other tips? Yeah, I think consistency is a big thing. And you can create some kind of framework around, kind of when you are trading, right? So if you are a swing trader, to me, that says you're there every day. You're looking, doesn't mean you're making trades every day, but you're there. So what's that routine look like? If you're less active, and yeah, there are like kind of larger pockets of time, I think one of the biggest things that you should be doing is having better cool downs. Okay, so better cool downs would mean that you kind of list out the things you're currently thinking about, new ideas or your sense of the market, right? Kind of the stuff that you are going to forget over a couple of days. You think you're not going to forget it, but you are going to forget it. And so it just kind of helps to feed your next warm up when you do come back, so you can kind of remember and pick up the thread of where you were before just a little bit faster. That cool down is not just helpful for this situation. It's also helpful before you go on vacation, before you take extended breaks. I promise you, it's not what you want to do, right? You want to just go, you want to just leave. But if you really take an extra 15, 20 minutes to just kind of take stock of where you're at, right, it's going to help you to actually relax better in that time off, because your mind is not holding as much stuff, right? You can stick a 1 pound weight in your hand, right, and put it out in front of you, at shoulder length. And you could do that for a decent amount of time. But at some point, your arm, your shoulder is going to get tired, right? So even some of the little things that we're holding on in our minds, right, takes up energy, and more energy than we need. So you put it all on paper, and it gives yourself a chance to kind of move on. And then because you're relaxing deeper, well, guess what? Your recovery is better. Then you also might have some new iterations and things that will kind of pop up intuitively as you're away. Right. To what extent does self-worth or how much money I feel like I deserve to make? Not sure what the question. I believe this is a problem. Your sister will uncover it, but it seems like a hard one to tease out. So yeah, I mean, really, like self-worth or how much money you deserve is a confidence issue. If that's where you're looking to dig, right? Then the question is like, is that a confidence issue that extends deep into your personal life as well? It sounds like it does. If you're talking self-worth versus your sense of competency as a trader, then yeah, it's a personal issue that's probably more, confidence related. All right, so there's a couple more questions here. I'll come back to them later. We're going to go to the 15 minutes and take a break. And yeah, we'll just kind of keep rolling here. All right, everybody perk your ears up because you're about to be asked something. Here's the question. I need to identify problems earlier. On Friday, I identified that I was at 0.5, but still did 0.6, right? So this is, again, the map, right? So that we reached level 5 or level 6. Managed to stop myself from doing 0.7 and onward. Awesome. Solid progress. I need to see this problem before 0.5, but I can't really seem to identify points 3 and 4. So here's my question to you all. Post in the chat right now. What do you think is the issue here? What would you say to this person if they asked you this question? We're going to see how well you all are thinking here.
So point is, I think, the level of emotion, Arun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the point is like, yeah, so in your map, right, like level 1 would be most basic level. All right, so here are a couple questions. How to find out more about 4 and 5? Yes, that is the question. So Bear Goes Long says, too congested, spread them out. Possible. Kelly says, wait for more confirmation. Vanessa says, keep journaling your emotions. Yep. Needs a better injecting, like at 0.5. So the injecting logic would be more the correction. So yes, I would agree that because they were able to go to step 6, it's either about a better injecting logic statement or they need to learn it better so it can have that strength. Pre-market prep to get in front of possible issues could help. Yes, agreed. The distinction would be between levels, more clear signals. I would say because of accumulated emotions going straight to 5 or higher. That is the one that I was going to say, Benjamin. So well done there. Go with the data collection again. Yep, agreed. Lesser emotions are harder to identify. Zoom in. Agree with that too. Yeah. All right. So listen, take a bow. You all did a great job. So for me, yeah, I think at this point of the course, assuming that there's been a lot of work here, right? Then yeah, I'm assuming, right, you're just struggling to really get to those early 3 or 4 points, and you've spent at this point 6 weeks trying to do that, right? If you only spent like a week, then maybe 2, then yeah, the data collection, the map, like all of the preparation, all of what everybody else is saying, I think is true. If it's been a solid 6 weeks, then it's likely accumulated emotion. And I'm going to answer a couple questions on accumulated emotion, and we're going to get into that. But that's really kind of where you have to look at, like, because you're probably going from 0 to 5 like that. Okay. All right. In your experience, can accumulated emotion be overcome in a few months, or is it more likely that it will be multi-months, perhaps a year or more? I've seen accumulated emotion be resolved in 10 minutes, right? Sometimes, like I said, you just kind of have to uncork that bottle of wine, let it breathe, and sucker goes away, right? It's like, oh, I just didn't realize I needed to actually do that. And I've been kind of holding on to this stuff for so long, and just releasing it's like, oh, you like instantly kind of just feel better. And sometimes that instantaneous relief, it like actually is a distinct change that will last. But that's not the true for everybody, right? So for a lot of people, what happens is there is a lot more, emotion accumulated from losses or failures or mistakes. There could be hundreds of examples. And so I think, like blown up accounts, right? You've blown up your account 7 times. I've worked with clients that have blown up their account that many times. I've worked with clients that have had many, many repetitive issues. And so, yeah, the accumulated emotion runs deep chronologically and in terms of frequency. And so, yeah, it could take a lot longer to kind of work through that. I will just call out, because my thing about language. In your experience, can accumulated emotions be overcome? Again, we don't want to overcome the problem, right? Linguistically, what's the intent? You're just trying to kind of get past it and get over it. No, you're trying to actually heal, recover, release, correct, resolve those past emotions. Because when you do that, then you're understanding why you were really holding on to it, what flaws were present, what things were going on, and you carry forward the learning and the lessons that create a stronger foundation from which you want to be kind of trading from and working from, right? If you just overcome it, you're kind of just hiding it. And that's not the goal here. The goal is to get you firmly on kind of more solid ground. All right. I would love to understand how to deal with accumulated emotions since I feel there's an underlying issue I'm still battling. Yeah. So look, the last 2 webinars, I've talked about both processes for doing that, as well as the sort of new process for trading trauma, but I'll just do a quick summary. Okay. Bottom line is you want to be kind of identifying the things that you're holding on to in the past, whether it's losses, mistakes, failures, blown accounts, whatever it is, right? So go back to those memories, try to make them present oriented. Treat the mental hand history as if you're dealing with that issue in present time. So why are you still holding on to the emotion related to those things? Okay. Why does it make sense that you'd be still holding on to it? Why does it make sense that that issue still is there? Those kinds of questions in the mental hand history is how you begin to kind of break apart the memory. And as I talked last time, there is that process for, kind of doing this sort of pseudo meditation, just kind of massaging through the old trauma, trying to work through it. I will say one other thing though, you are free to talk to a therapist. I mean, like if it's a trading related thing, they might not necessarily understand trading enough to help you navigate it, but that's not really important. But you can go to them saying, listen, I want, some of your PTSD, right? Post-traumatic stress disorder treatment, and, help clean this thing out. There's lots of ways to do this. I mean, I'm just kind of giving you the ones that I have found to be the most simplistic. But yeah, you want to treat this like a clinical issue that needs a therapist, go for it. Because if it's really that impairing of your performance, look, therapists are treating much worse issues than you. So they ought to be able to help you work through it. All right. So I want to go through a couple of mental hand histories that all kind of include some accumulated emotion as part of this. Okay. And so this is one that I actually reviewed in webinar 3. And there's been some progress here that I think is quite strong in step 3. But from what I gather, this person has not cracked through all of the accumulated emotion yet. And so let's just kind of look at this. After a loss, I want to get back into a trade as soon as possible. I enter attack mode in which my trading rules and entries don't even matter anymore. I can't stand the lack of success. The failure is unacceptable. I don't understand what I have to do to make it work. Just one win and I will feel better. You get the point. All right. So why is it logical? Nobody likes to be wrong. I want to feel good about my P&L up on the day and would do almost anything to see that happen. Taking a loss is the market telling me I'm wrong, and I want to immediately prove to myself that I'm not dumb or stupid and can be right. Okay, so now we get to step 3. Why is that logic flawed? Here out of the gate. To prove that I'm not dumb, I'll do something dumb. Okay, so, I mean, this is common, and yet, right, this is what's happening. Taking a loss does not prove that I am dumb or stupid. It means I either let my emotions get the best of me, or I did not execute according to my strategy or trade criteria. And so you read through the rest of this. The bottom line is they're making progress here, but yet there's still more emotion. So where does my mind go? My mind goes to what I just kind of mentioned. There's just likely more frequency. There's just more stuff in the background here, right? More individual instances where you've got to go back and treat those old stupid mistakes, bring them into the present day, understand why you made them. What were the emotions that were happening at that time? So I let my emotions get the best of me. Okay, well, what were they? Because the more you can kind of unpack what was happening from this new perspective that is more educated and understanding of emotions and what can happen, you will be able to like understand what happened in the past and bring that knowledge forward. So you'll, again, have more information that provides stability and strength going forward. Okay. So that's likely what's going on here, is that there's just a need to kind of create like a nice long laundry list of all of the mistakes and failures you made. And then, yeah, it could end up being really, really long, and that's fine. You don't have to go through all of them, but start pulling them off the shelf and breaking through them. So, maybe pick one a day for the next few weeks, right? It's just going to help to kind of clean you out. And that's what we're trying to do here. All right. So this example, I'm not going to read through the whole thing. I just want to, again, call out the instances in mental hand histories that are evidence of accumulated emotion. That to me is kind of the purpose of this right now, so that you all will be able to, on your own, identify when, okay, there might be something deeper to dig. If you go through a mental hand history, you come up with corrections, and you have that same kind of problem where you're just, emotions just rise too rapidly for you to be able to catch them early and correct them. Okay. Last year, I had to suffer a major drawdown by my standards, so I became very risk averse. My statistics tell me that the less I would have done, the better it would have been. Therefore, one might think that every trade I can avoid implies less drawdown. So the problem is that they're, kind of avoiding pulling the trigger. On the one hand, losses are part of the game. I just have to accept that. On the other hand, I've adjusted my strategy and risk to market situation. The past losses, therefore, have little to do with the trades that are at stake now. Don't compare apples to oranges. You can see the kind of rationalization trying to work around the old emotion, trying to overcome the old emotion. It's not working, right? You've got to go straight for the jugular, straight into the past, and identify those big pain points and work through them. That is where you got to address this. Okay, so now this was an example of somebody who was, again, kind of working through that trading accumulated emotion process, right? We're asking, right, what is the most painful part of the memory? Okay, and you can see what's in here. Let's just go through a little bit of it. Most painful part of the memory of adding to a losing position until I had no margin left was the despair I felt. How could I be so stupid to go down this path again? I even held a part of the position overnight in the hope that the market would give me some of my losses back. That caused a painful, sleepless night full of anxiety, overwhelming despair. Thoughts like, I can't do this to myself or my family anymore. I'm finished with trading. Right? And yet, with all that pain, I did the same thing again and again. It's like I never learn. This destroys my ego. Why can't I conquer this? Why can't I stop myself from repeating this destructive habit? So there are, kind of good answers through the rest of this. And I'll even call out in step 4, right, that they, came up with the mental correction as well as the technical one, right? So I talked about that before, right? Sometimes the tendency was to get just too technical. You got both points in here. It's great. What I will say, though, I think is in general, what is missing from here, right? So if we look at step 2, why does it make logical sense? There were times when I added to a losing position and the market did come back and I either broke even or made money. Man, that is some really solid insight, right? The false positives made it easier to violate your rules again. And yeah, off you go. But to have this level of emotional intensity where you are like with all your effort trying to destroy yourself, right? Which is effectively what it looks like. It ain't as simple as this, right? I mean, there's just no way. So yes, this could be part of the problem. But I think what is likely here is some desperation. So desperation is the most intense confidence issue that's out there. It very, very frequently has personal roots to it. Okay. Vanessa calling out the chapter on desperation. Thank you. Yes. There's probably maybe 10, 15 pages on this, but in terms of a very, very tight strategy. But the bottom line is, right, that it usually kind of pigeonholes into something personal. Okay. Destroys your ego. Your confidence is on the line in a way that is far too big for the market really to handle, for you to handle. So that's really kind of what you want to be digging through here. Okay. One last mental hand history. This is not related to accumulated emotion. It's just the only other mental hand history that I'm going to review. And what I really wanted to kind of call out here is that what you're going to see is that there in steps 3 and 4, there are some nods to sort of the technical side of trading, but the psychological flaws are kind of corrected and woven in a very kind of clear way. And so I just want to call this out as a good example, right, where you can kind of work on both sides at the same time. So not very long. So point number 2, right, this is, again, kind of level 2. Everyone's up more than me. I start to look at my P&L. It's lagging the rest of the market and think, how can I make up for some of the difference? Why does it make sense? I think in absolute terms, if you have $1 million and the market is up 3%, you should be up 30K, just like everyone else is. If you're good at what you do, you should make more than the average trader. Why is that logic flawed? My best days are when the market's up or down 1%, which is 70% of the time. It's impossible to always be up more than everyone else. You're good at what you do if your average is up more than others on a year-to-year basis. I can't be up more than other traders every day. What's the correction here? Whether the market is up or down during the year, I expect myself to be up. I don't expect to outperform the market every day. Again, you can see there's a lot of technical stuff in here that I wouldn't, focus on, but it is woven in well to understanding that the expectations are out of line and what those corrections need to be. Okay, let's take a break here. I'm going to get to some additional questions and I'll answer some questions. So why don't we say like 12:37 Eastern time, so 7-minute break, come back, I'll answer some of the other questions here, and then we'll come back to more questions. Okay. All right, where are we at here? Robin, I'm typical high performer, being loved by former employees for saying yes to everything and doing it all, and yes feels good for me too, even though I know doing it all makes none of the tasks being the best. Okay, so basically it's like master of many, good at many, master of none. I forget what that line is, but I notice more and more how this trait hinders me back and comes back over and over in my life as a full-time trader, makes me unfocused, lack of energy, and so on in my trading. Is this common? And how I keep myself from not falling into earlier habits? It was actually one of the reasons for quitting my job. This is a confidence issue. Okay, I'll at least kind of point you in that direction, right? If you get confidence from being helpful, being present to others, that means that you're not as convicted to your own needs and aspirations. So it's kind of clear that's what you're describing. The question is like, why is that the case? Now, it's possible that maybe you've kind of worked through the specifics for kind of what's going on for you from a confidence standpoint, and then it becomes more about the habit and training, right? So, bringing in some logic, like it's okay to be, quote, selfish. For you, being selfish is not being selfish. It's being self-interested, right? Having a deeper and more profound care and concern for the things that are important to you. So yeah, doing a goals worksheet would be very, very important to do, right? Really kind of hone you in, box you in a way that just helps it to be okay that this is where your focus is primarily going to be. And then when you feel yourself kind of wanting to check maybe social media or check emails or check other places where you can be needed, right? The injecting of logic to make sure that you're fulfilling your own needs, or for either first or that they've been met before you can go to kind of do that. It's got to be you first, others second. Otherwise, like you said, you're going to be right back in the same spot. All right. Okay. Noted. Keep being a bit soft on the process goal example. What do we do when we rationally can say what we want, but don't really feel any strong internal conviction towards anything? Fantastic question. And you can do a mental hand history on that. Okay. So the mental hand history is, I want X, but I don't really feel like that. I don't feel that strongly. Okay. Why does it make sense? It makes sense because there's lots of other things that I want, and I'm having a hard time choosing. It makes sense because I don't really believe that I can achieve it. Okay. Well, what's the flaw? Well, actually don't really need belief in order to achieve your goals. You just have to want it, and wanting it might be the beginning of it. Maybe it's about kind of ramping up your motivation and connecting to that why. And so doing the goals worksheet is really key for you. All right. Captain Axelrod. Do you recommend I make a real-time strategy for this? I don't experience this issue during live trading, though. It's strange that underconfidence sometimes presents itself as overconfidence in the live market, as if my subconscious is trying to compensate. Wait, is this the same question you asked before? Yeah, I guess I'm like we answered this already. So yeah, I think anytime that you have, it's not strange that underconfidence is causing overconfidence, right? Yes, you're actually trying to compensate. That is what is happening, right? So there's this sort of system, like the system is designed for that kind of trying to find that balance, but it's trying to balance itself around a flaw, right? Trying to get comfortable, on a mattress that has a lot of sand in it, right? A lot of rocks in it. It's like, it's not going to be comfortable, right? So trying to kind of balance that, you got to figure out like what the root of the underconfidence is. And then, see if the correction of that, the injection of logic actually helps to take down the overconfidence when you see it. Or no, actually the overconfidence is its own animal in that moment. And there's sort of something specific to that needs a real-time strategy. But yes, you definitely need one. Okay. How would you differentiate between risk-taker personality versus overconfidence, or risk-averse personality versus low confidence? It's a good question. I'm not big in the sort of general kind of personality research. I know of it. My experience, both personally and professionally, is that personality changes over time. It's not as fixed as some people think it is. So yes, you will have tendencies, but if you take like a Myers-Briggs, like I took one in college and then took one maybe 10, 15 years ago. So let's say 10 years out of college. And I was not completely different, but I was dramatically different. So, personality is more agile. So like, how do you differentiate between those two things? It's fuzzy. I'm not 100% sure. That's why I kind of veer more towards what does the sort of present data tell you, and what would you define as being a flaw? And if it is a flaw and you feel like it's part of your personality, then change or adapt your personality, right? At a certain point though, right, you'll find like kind of a limitation to that. It's going to start to feel like it's maybe not you anymore, and that's fine. So you start to dial it back, right? You are kind of looking for that fingerprint, right? Both from a trading strategy and also from, an understanding of your own mentality. My issue is mostly due to my memory, my inability to remember my open trades, and mostly stupidity. Not having stops in high risk trades like short trades and option spreads. Yeah. Not wanting to do what if scenarios, analysis weekly, daily. I'm very good at taking losses, but don't act enough fast. Where should I focus most? Discipline, confidence, fear, or greed? If your issues are a lot due to your memory, then I would suggest looking at the reasons why your memory is impaired. Look at sleep, diet, exercise, kind of just basic physiological stuff. Number one. Number two, kind of how well are you kind of clearing out the stuff in your personal life so you can kind of clear your mind out? There could be just a lot of accumulated data in your head. Number three, it could just be weakness. There's a lot of good resources out there about like kind of ways of training your memory. So I would use trading as a task to improve that, especially if you see those memory issues existing elsewhere. I would suggest that the stupidity is probably not pure stupidity and more due to the memory issues, or perhaps one of the other emotional issues. I would probably start there, unless you have clear evidence that, confidence, fear, or greed are, the biggest issues, right? I would start there and not necessarily around the discipline ones. All right. Good timing. So I got through all the questions that were in here. Okay. So she was asking, how do you differentiate between normal emotions and accumulated emotions? You just have to kind of find enough data that suggests that you just cannot, your emotions are not kind of rising in a more sort of steady, systematic way. It's like they're constantly jumping from level 2 to level 7, level 0 to level 5. Like there's just these gaps that exist. I mean, I guess we kind of call it like the market is gapping up or down. So yeah, that's really what you'd be looking for. Most often your emotions are going to have some kind of a steady progression to them. Even in markets where, or even at times where you might be, kind of taking on losses, maybe one loss like gets you from level 4 to level 7, fine, right? But there was a progression that you could see prior to that, that would make it a bit more normal then. Okay, so let's get to other questions here. Sometimes I struggle to differentiate between mental and technical side. I just have to see my problems, deviations in my mind, write them down, blah, blah, blah. Can you help? Yeah. So there's a number of people that were asking about this same question, right? Getting kind of stuck with the strategic reminder and like kind of what to put here. So yeah, let's maybe attack this in a slightly different way. Okay. Because I know this has been a concern for many of these sessions. Let's look at a couple A to C game analysis that I think were well done. And in general, those of you that sent me your A to C game analysis, I really think you did a great job with them. Okay, don't have a ton of feedback. There were a couple maybe like procedural points. Like I think one person had put in like, doing my preparation, not doing my preparation, or like kind of slacking on it and then not doing it all. It's fine to be there, right, as just like kind of one other line item. But again, I would make sure that it's like kind of segregated, because the primary tool is being used for that real-time feedback as an antidote to, focusing on P&L. So, your preparation is not necessarily going to help you to do that unless you remember in the moment, you're like, oh, wow, yeah, I didn't do my prep very well today. And then if that's the case, then I must be in my B game. If it's that deterministic, then fine, keep it there, but make sure it's just sort of separated out. All right, but back to the strategic reminder. So let's look at this sort of tactical skill here, because anything that is listed and in this sort of A game, B game, C game on the bottom half, you can use this as a strategic reminder. Like you could kind of pull out, right, more aspirationally, right? This is what my A game looks like. This is what my best level of decision making looks like, and you're just aspiring towards that. Or you could be more kind of defensively minded and putting in elements of your B and C game, right? That would be evidence of what you are trying to avoid, right? So again, the strategic reminder is being used in those key moments when you've injected logic to correct fear and greed and FOMO and anger, whatever, and you've got your mind, you got your emotions stabilized, and now you want to make sure that you are improving from a decision-making execution standpoint. So any of this stuff will help, okay? Same thing here, right? And there's just different ideas about what's here, but they're all good. So additional questions, kind of in the home stretch of this first half here, and then I'm going to get to future ideas. All right, building rhythm and routine in my pre-post intraday market routines. It feels clunky. There's so much material to review that it takes longer than 5 minutes intraday or 15 minutes pre-market that I've allotted for those routines. You got to simplify it, right? Again, go back to that idea. There's only so much your mind can focus on at one time. Simplify it. And if it's hard to do that, then, you just prioritize around the biggest issues, right? There may be others that are obviously, impacting you, but yeah, your mind just doesn't have the space to do it. So you've got to choose. 2 years into my trading journey, and I have the feeling that I need to work both on my technical skill and the psychological part. How do I determine how much focus I should have on either or each area? The answer is never zero for both of them. You should always have some, but it's going to fluctuate kind of based on where you're at. So if you feel like I think, again, we kind of think of these as kind of like concurrent inchworms, right? If you are like kind of really outstretching from a technical standpoint, your mental game, well, that's going to mean that your C game is going to happen a lot more. You're going to be making a lot of those obvious mistakes that can't avoid by just continuing to stretch that technical inchworm. So yeah, you're going to prioritize more of the mental game because that's what's going to help you to move the back end of your execution forward. But on other times, right, you could feel like, no, you don't actually feel pretty solid mentally and emotionally. I've got a good routine here. I'm doing really well, but I feel like there's more I could be doing. I could be sizing up. I could be adding additional symbols, or adding different indicators. And so then there's going to be more technical skill to get a kind of buffer on both ends. It could be both from a game standpoint or a C game standpoint. It's going to fluctuate up and down. The bottom line is make sure that they never go to zero. How do I get out of my bearish mindset, not following sentiment of market? What is holding me back? I'm having confidence issues, afraid of letting go of my current method of trading, even though it's not working well. I would suggest that you have not gotten to the root of your confidence issues yet, right? Like, at least you're being honest with yourself that it's not working, but maybe there's some fear here of like kind of stepping out that's just, so strong. So like, why is that? Like, what is compelling you? I mean, maybe you could frame this as a beginning of a mental hand history. Like, what is compelling you to continue to trade in a way that is not working? Why does it make sense that that's the case? Right. My guess is that you're probably going to see something on the personal level here, right? You probably are going to see some comparison, right? Some kind of snapshot of this just in a personal sense. And then you could do mental hand histories for those personal things as well, even if they're in the past, trying to better understand what the heck is going on that would allow you to be compelled to kind of just keep your nose and keep your feet in crap. I mean, that's what you're doing. You're kind of punishing yourself in some kind of way. All right, this next one is a long question, but I wanted to keep it in its totality because I think it's a really interesting one that I think has application to many of you. So let's just go through this. I have many issues to solve. I started with the ones that were most urgent and causing me the most problems. But as the market environment changes, so do the prevalence of each of those issues. For example, in my case, FOMO and revenge trading show up during rallies, whereas low confidence, fear of failure, anxiety are more intense when things look very bleak. My system indicates I need to enter, but I'm scared to do so. Okay, call out the question. How do you suggest we tackle the cyclical nature of the market and the psychology such that we are not scattered and make sure that we are making progress? Is it better to work on them as they are happening, revisiting and improving them when they return? Or do you think it's better to keep drilling into the same ones until they get resolved, even though they are not necessarily being triggered at the time? For the latter, I have a bit of difficulty improving and connecting with the logic injected as I feel the emotions are not being triggered as much. And that makes perfect sense because I would agree with you. That is really not the best way to go about this. So I think it's very cool that you kind of have the map for what's going on in different markets that actually can be even an indicator for yourself to recognize when the market has actually changed, which is very, very cool. Okay. And you're right. So when you have issues present, right? Yeah, that is your time to be fighting and correcting. You're in the trenches again. You're battling it right in front of you. That's what you should be focusing on. The other issues are not showing up. You're in essence just like making sure that you're prepared so that when they come up, then you can kind of go to battle for that problem. It's almost like, fighting two enemies, right? One is, kind of outside the ring. Let's say this is, professional wrestling. One's outside the ring. The other one's in. Two very, very different fighters. Okay. Well, you don't have to worry. You're not fight the guy that's outside the ropes. You can't fight him. Fight the one that's in the ring with you. Okay. If you find yourself saying negative things to yourself, how do you reverse that? Well, I mean, first question here, right, first point here is that negative thinking is not the problem. Okay. Negative thinking is a symptom, is a signal, right, of the underlying problem. So how are you going to reverse it? You got to understand what are those negative, what's kind of causing those negative things? Is it self-criticism that's based in anger and expectations? Is it, negative things that's kind of maybe not necessarily as harsh, but just, annoying, demeaning, undermining, that could be more related to confidence? Or is it negative things that's related to fear and, kind of trying to keep you in the smaller box? Now, I will say that it's possible that it could just be habitual at this point. If you've done a lot of work and made some progress, those negative thoughts are kind of just like kind of running through your head. And, I will say this kind of as a personal example. The first time I realized that negative thoughts don't have to have power on you was on the golf course, where I was literally having a stream of negative thoughts on this one shot that was really, really hard in a turn. And I stepped back and said, you know what? That actually doesn't matter, right? These things they can be there. And if I don't attend to them and they just become kind of noise, will they actually impact me? And the answer was no. I hit a fantastic shot with all that noise in my head. Didn't matter. It was not material. So, maybe you're at that point where you can kind of just treat it as a signal, but not a signal of a deeper flaw, just maybe a signal that the flaw or the habit is kind of unraveling, which is what it was for me at that point. When a trade is, okay, so this question was actually already asked, and we'll keep going. All right, how to consistently improve confidence. I'm still sizing smaller due to discipline challenges. I see a good setup. It pulls back, and then slight pullback causes me to lose confidence. And then I shrink or cancel the order. While I have been tracking my performance, and it has been positive the last month, the pain of previous losses still jump in an unconscious level. All right. What does that sound like, folks? Accumulated emotion. Okay. So yes, you can kind of go through, right, some of the lingering accumulated emotion that's been built up from those previous losses. Okay. But what I will say is that sort of confidence that you're trying to build here, I would say is kind of analogistic to a pyramid getting bigger. How do you make a pyramid bigger? You got to make the base bigger, right? You got to make, right, the setups that you see, the results that you can have up here, it be the top of the pyramid, right? If your base is too small, everything feels really unstable, right? Your confidence is not strong enough to support you being this good of a trader, right? And so, yeah, you think about it, there is a lag that happens, right? It takes a little bit of time for your system to kind of catch up and be like, oh yeah, I actually am that good. That's like kind of expanding out. So, what you can do also is, just go back through and acknowledge the growth, acknowledge the improvements, write down kind of some of the accomplishments that you've had, some of the things that you define as being your strengths, your skills, your competencies, just make them more obvious to you. Because right now what's most obvious are the losses, and they are kind of overshadowing your confidence. All right. Last question here. At least it was sent in advance. Math comes very easy to me. It always has. My brain constantly calculates P&L from the visual charts in front of me, especially my option contract chart, which I have up anytime I'm in a trade. Even though I have P&L removed from my screens, there's no escaping P&L. I need to always focus. I need to focus on the process rather than results-oriented goals. Always knowing that P&L can trigger emotions, escalate, then hijack my decision-making process. Before I know what's going on, what disruption or logic can be injected at that moment? How do I do that to derail that hijack? Okay. So first off, yeah, this is common, right? I mean, many of you are not dumb. And even if it's not quite as obvious as this, you can kind of keep track of what's going on in the back of your mind as much as you're trying to put it out of your mind. So, we've talked about A to C game analysis, right, as the thing that you're kind of shifting perspective. And so if you're using that, then the line in here where you say, I need to focus on the process rather than results-oriented goals. No, you need to focus on execution. And the focus on execution should be a process-oriented goal and one that you train, because the ability to focus on execution more than short-term results requires training. Your mind has been weaponized. It's just very, very well trained to focus on P&L. It's not as well trained to focus on execution. So yeah, train it. That's number one. So yeah, A to C analysis, right, can help to make that conversion, right? And so every time you catch yourself just mentally calculating P&L, right, make the correction, inject logic, beat the dead horse here, right? And just into submission. It's just a lot of repetition needs to happen there. Okay. What progress looks like. Let's keep the system working. Yeah, let me just get to a couple questions that came in here just to keep it clean. In your experience, is confidence, the mismatch of actual skill versus perceived skill, the most common problem? That actually defines the confidence problems, right? Right. You have confidence is just the emotion that reflects your perception of your skill. So when it's excessive, you feel overconfident. When it's too small, you feel underconfident. Right? The goal is to actually make it more and more accurate, right? And that's the challenge. How to handle relapses. I can trade correctly for a few days, and then one day I just forget everything and go back to my old patterns. My gosh, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about here. So you're on your ahead of the game here. That's really what we're going to kind of finish the masterclass with, is a lot of kind of content here about what you can do in situations like this, and also like I said here, we're going to look at what progress looks like. So, all right. All right. So we're going to take a more detailed look at what progress looks like, because it's just a common problem that I've seen with many of my clients. Okay. You must be accurate about kind of where you are in the process, where, is the system working or not? And so many times, if you're not recognizing that you are making progress, then you think you're not making progress, and then you stop doing what's working because you didn't know it was, and then you start tooling around trying to figure it's like, no, okay. Or if you're actually not making progress, you need to know it so that you actually do something different. So in either scenario, right, which happens, we need to be accurate at being able to spot progress. So I'm going to give you just some of the constructs to kind of make sense of this. And what's here should make some sense. Okay. 3 general categories: recognition, correction, resolution. What does that sound like? Yeah. The 3 main steps of the system, right? Map your pattern, correct your problem, resolve your problem. All right, fine. It's not exactly the same, but you get the point. So resolution is really the finish line here. That's what everything is about. Okay. So technically it's yes, map your pattern, get to the root of your patterns so you can devise a correction, and then you can correct your problem over time and eventually reach resolution. But the point is, right, these are the 3 general categories that we're looking for. So let's look at recognition. Okay. You get credit for improving your ability to see your patterns, right? Both in general. So in the mapping, the data collection process, you get credit for all of that. Okay. Refining your map, finding more details, finding earlier signs. Yeah, all of that is progress. I know it might feel pathetic when you're still getting steamrolled by those emotions and you're still making the same mistakes, but you have to look at that as progress because it forms the foundation for your ability to eventually make those corrections. Okay. Then you also get credit when you're able to see those signs of a problem in real time. So, okay, you've mapped your pattern, but yet you're not using it as much because you're forgetting. And so then you're getting to level 5 too often. It's like, oh, sorry, I forgot. All right, cool. All right, next time I'll be better. You just keep working to train your mind so you can see in real time the escalation of the pattern. And so there's kind of lots of data points there where you can make some progress. Then the correction. Okay, so the correction, this is sort of several fold. Okay. It's all about your execution in the moment. How much emotion are you able to stop? I'm going to say control. Okay. So control is a sign that you're kind of working towards the correction, or it usually is. So you get credit for that. And then of course, ultimately, then you get credit when you're able to stop it and actually correct and dissipate that emotion in real time and begin to regain your ability to trade well. And so, I think a lot of times we sort of use the element of time as a factor here, right? How fast were you able to recognize your patterns? How fast were you able to correct or control them? How fast were you able to recover either in real time or maybe at the end of the trading day? Okay. So that element of time is really the element of, effort would be another factor. You can look at how hard was it for you to recognize the pattern? How hard was it for you to correct or control your emotions at that time, right? Because what we want to see is the amount of effort needed to decrease over time and the amount of time it takes for those things to decrease. Okay. So all of that can be, evidence of progress. And then lastly, we get to resolution. Okay. And resolution is not like a finish line, right? Where it's like, oh, well, I just won the race and it's over, done. Like it's not as clean as that. I wish it was, but we're dealing with things that are unconscious. So you're not really going to be aware of the singular moment when you've actually attained resolution, let alone it's not always going to happen like all at once, right? There very often will be instances where you can feel like fundamentally different, like your reactions are significantly less, but not gone entirely, right? And so that significant reduction in the reaction, right? The emotion that gets triggered immediately, right? You're just getting down, shrinking, almost like you're kind of turning down the volume, right? Making it smaller and smaller. And so there's just less stuff for you to deal with. So then, of course, it's easier to see and easier to correct. Okay? Way to think about resolution also is you want to get the back end of your inchworm across the line, right? So under the most intense, the most difficult circumstances, how much is that FOMO, that anger, that fear, overconfidence getting triggered? And if it's less and less, or even gone entirely in those really difficult circumstances, then you can say firmly that it's been resolved. Okay, so all of these things, right, little data points, ideas for you to be able to kind of measure progress. In a minute, I'm going to get to some questions that you can be asking both in real time and in your cooldown. That can be helpful to just kind of gauging where you are in the process. But I want to give you one other kind of concept here that, yeah, it's just been really helpful for clients over the last, I'd say, kind of 4 years or so since I've become more aware of this thing. And so I call it kind of battling the echoes. Okay. So are you dealing with the problem, right? Or are you dealing with the reverberation of the problem? Okay. What I mean by that is here you've got these underlying flaws and they are kind of driving, right, the signals and symptoms and issues that you're seeing on the surface, right? Both the negative thoughts and the mistakes and the emotions, all that crap that we've been talking about for the last 8 weeks, right? These underlying flaws are driving all that. Okay. And these things are all occurring. Well, what happens when you start to actually correct this stuff and the issues really do start to get resolved? And, this stuff can kind of be self-sustaining. It's like the echoes are just kind of reverberating out. You have a reaction, but it's really just more of a habitual reaction to have those negative thoughts, it's like, oh yeah, wait, I'm supposed to get angry at myself here. I'm not saying you're thinking that, but it's kind of like what the mind is like. It's like, oh, I just made a mistake, or I just lost a bunch of money, or oh, I just saw this position moving. It's like, I'm supposed to want to jump in. I'm supposed to get pissed off at myself. But yet it doesn't have the same kind of depth. The problem is, right, it's not showing up in the way that I just described. What happens is you show up with the same desire to jump in, get pissed off like before. However, how easy is it to kind of work through? And this is where I think a lot of people kind of lose sight of what's happening and they get a little bit discouraged because it continues to happen when they thought they were kind of past it, right? And so they're not prepared. But if you try to inject logic, go through that process, and it's like very easy, like it just goes away. Like, but if you let it go, it's going to be as problematic as before, right? What that says is you've made significant progress in moving towards that resolution, but the habitual reactions are still going to be there, right? Until you meet it with that logic and just kind of beat it away. But it should be much, much easier to do at that point. But if you don't do it, it's going to stick around and you're going to think that you haven't made progress when you have. And you can see my sadness in this because it's been, a real difficulty for a lot of clients over the years. It is hard. You don't get to see this stuff play out in front of you. You've got to be kind of reacting to yourself. And it's like in the moment you're reacting and you don't know if it's, oh man, I cannot believe I jumped into that position again. Like I thought I got past this. Well, you did. If you had recognized and prepared yourself for it, it would have been very easy to correct. Okay? Now, if it's not easy to correct, then the resolution hasn't taken hold yet and it requires still a lot of effort. But if it's very easy to correct, then just stay on top of it. At this point, it's like a snowball running down, just run. You're going to get to the finish line. But if you take your eye off the prize at the very end, you're just going to trip and fall. And there you are on the ground, like staring at the finish line in front of you, just bloodied and battered. It's like, damn it. Okay. So please do everything you can to keep sharp here. All right. So just for the sake of time, I'm going to kind of go through this a little bit quicker. Questions that you can use to evaluate recognition. Okay. Did you recognize new details around your problem? If you did, that's progress. Did you recognize earlier details in your map? Did you recognize that your mentality had dropped sooner than you had before? Apples to apples in situations like this, were you able to recognize, right, that the boredom and the distractions were, easier? It's like So when I've done this for myself and for clients, like you get to the point where you start to recognize the thought to do X is the problem, not just the actual action, right? Then you know you're really recognize the earliest signs. All right, questions to evaluate progress from a correction standpoint. How well did you prevent your emotions from escalating? All right, so we gave the example before, right? Saw it at level 5, couldn't stop it. Saw it at level 6, couldn't stop it. Stopped it at level 7. Okay, so now that's progress, right? Already, because it didn't get to level 10. Can you stop it at level 6? Can you stop it at level 5? That is your signs of progress, not it showing up at all. Especially for those of you with high expectations. You are going to have expectations of yourself in correcting your expectations. So yeah, this stuff is not going to go to 0 out of the gate. Just like a stock, right? How often does it go just literally straight to 0? No, it's like it's going to bounce somewhere. So the point is, right, you've got to just keep chipping away and work your way down. And you're making progress if you're doing that. You're making progress if you're just recognizing it. But if you're actually correcting it, then it's getting smaller and smaller. You're turning down that knob. How quickly or how well were you able to recover during the day, right? So again, it goes back to what I said earlier about speed of recovery. How quickly were you able to recover at the end of the day? So sometimes it takes like hours to recover from a really, really gut-wrenching day. Well, then it takes 50 minutes, 30, 25. See how quickly you can recover. You get to the point where I had this is maybe a more dramatic example because it was a poker client playing in a very, very big tournament. We're talking like $1 million on the line. And he busts out in 5th. And it was like an awful hand to lose on. And yet he was happy. You're like, well, you made $100K, not life-changing money for him. Good payday, but wasn't $1 million. And why was he happy? Because he played phenomenally, literally the best that he could have played. And he was happy about it. So yeah, it is possible to get to that point. He and I worked together for about 3 years prior to that. So yeah, is it possible for you? Not for everybody. But yeah, you can at least be shrinking down that time frame to recover. Did you avoid technical mistakes that previously you would have made? Big one. I can't tell you the number of times where clients will make progress where they actually will be avoiding, like they just forget that they just didn't jump into that position, right? Because you're correcting a spot where you're just not over trading. Like it's hard to know when you're not over trading as much, unless you're actually tracking like trade frequency, like the number of trades you take per day, and it's kind of wildly different. It's like, all right, I should be taking 5 trades per day, and I'm taking 20. Okay, fine. Well, you get it down to 10, like that's noticeable. But then, like, all right, well, you're trading up to 5. Well, sometimes at some point, like 6 could be acceptable, right? So did you avoid technical mistakes? Ask yourself that question. Go back. Like you got the data in front of you. Look at the charts. Were there trades today that I would have taken and I didn't? It's a really important one to recognize. How well do you understand and are able to use the mental game strategy, right? And so you can see some of the questions that have come in today, right, are expressing the fuzziness that is still there, which is appropriate at this level, right, this stage of the game. Where are you going to be in 2 months? How much better do you understand your own strategy and system? It's going to be a lot better. So yeah, you get credit for that. All right, so here's some questions to evaluate resolution. If you performed at your absolute worst, and I would add, if the circumstances were really lined up against you, a lot of bad luck, personal issues, just garbage everywhere, how well did you perform compared to your absolute worst previously? Did your typical triggers not cause any issues or emerge with less intensity? That's what I was talking about, right? How intense is that initial reaction? Is it less intense? You feel more breathing room to operate. Sometimes when you're sort of so full of emotions, kind of imagine it like kind of being sucked underwater, right? You just like in the ocean, just drowning, literally drowning in emotion, right? And you kind of pull your head above water and you can kind of have some little chance to breathe. But then here, right, was there actually so much less emotion that you actually can just navigate and move and around? And it's like things start to move in slow motion in a sense. That's like you're clearing space in your mind that used to be occupied with all that noise and those reactions. Did you recognize new details about your issue? Okay, so there's progression at the back end that's occurring here too. Did you identify new issues or areas to improve mentally? And we'll kind of get to that next. All right, we just see if there's any questions on evaluating progress. If there's not, I'm going to hold off on answering any other questions until.
There's one from Amadeus. Thank
you. Yeah. Do you have a scorecard of sorts for evaluating the progress you just helped us define? No, because I've kind of left that to clients to, I'd say it's kind of agile in that regard, but I think, you got the three categories, right? So you can just kind of give yourself a score based on your ability to recognize, your ability to correct and resolve. Elements of time are a big one. The amount of effort, right, that it takes to address those issues are kind of big factors if you want to add in, and then you could also kind of just like look at the circumstances as a factor. But yeah, I mean, I think if you're if you at a very minimal level, ask yourself either these questions or generally, did I make progress today? Or in what way did I make progress today? And see what comes to mind. And you can just kind of track that daily. All right. So addressing future issues. All right. So we come back to our good friend, the inchworm here. So in this case, I'll try to stop him. No, all right. So in this case, we're assuming that there's been some movement of the front end, that back end forward. Okay. What issues are likely to emerge? That is the $1 million question, because what do we know? This is a game. You will not solve yourself. There's always going to be something to work on. It's a question of whether or not you have the sensitivity to see it or the desire to actually work on it. But every trader in the world has something that they can improve on, both mentally and technically. I think some of us would aspire to deal with those issues, but that's reality. Okay. So number one, and it's a big number one. If I would say from a percentage basis, which ones happen more often? This one compared to the others happens at probably 80 to 90% of the time. Okay. You make progress with any of your issues, you're likely to get ahead of yourself in some way. Okay. So any of the progress that I was talking about you being able to make, it's going to make you either overconfident about, the inevitability of you achieving your goals. It's going to make you overconfident in thinking that you're farther along with your strategy. And so, yeah, it's okay if you just half-ass your routine today. Yeah, it's okay. I can take this trade because, I'm kind of dealing with a bank of money and my account is kind of swelled. So yeah, it's fine. I can take on a little bit more risk. Overconfidence is going to be the sneaky little bastard that's going to just kind of convince you to do things that are antithetical to your own progression. And so, yeah, that you've got to deal with. And yeah, at some point in the future, those of you that kind of follow my work, I've got kind of like monthly themes. I'm going to make overconfidence, like we're going to make an overconfident month. And because it's just so hard for you all to want to deal with it because it's fun. It feels good. Like you don't want to take that away. And yet, you're full of it. It's going to cause problems. Eliminating fear can lead to anger. So now all of a sudden you go from being on the sidelines to just taking more trades. And so because you're taking more trades, you're more now going to have those trades that are going to reverse, or the fear was causing you to jump out. And so, yes, there are going to be some that actually reverse entirely and stop you out. Like there's just going to be more stuff that could cause anger. And sometimes the anger was the initial problem that eventually led to the fear. Now you're kind of rolling back the clock. You dealt with the fear. Now you got to deal with the anger. Improved confidence can be held back by fear. So I actually kind of talked about this already with that pyramid description. So in essence, the fear now is like, am I really that good? Yes, you are. Prove it to yourself. So you can expand the base of that confidence. So what's happening up here feels normal. A more nuanced blend of technical and mental and emotional problems. I'd say this is most common with, traders I work with who get like kind of 3 years and greater kind of level of experience, where we'll kind of take care of the big stuff, like whether it be overconfidence or fear. And then the issues that they come back with tend to be this kind of blend, almost like the mental hand history that I reviewed, where we kind of have to deal with it from both sides. Like sometimes it's a focus issue or a boredom issue, right? Other times it's like very kind of subtle doubt or hesitancy, right? It's like, man, I kind of feel like it, things are lined up here, not trusting my intuition as well as I could be, so teasing out both sides of it becomes the answer to addressing it. But I think if you get to that point, if you're dealing with some big problems and then all of a sudden it just feels a lot more nuanced to you and you're not really sure what's happening, that's a clear indication that you're making a ton of progress. And then we've got different market environments, which I think the question that I answered earlier kind of alluded to this, which is, look, you may not yet know how you're going to react to different markets or even the change of a market. And if you're not aware of that yet, well, then you're going to be sort of forced to become aware of it at some point. All right. Any questions on those future issues? I will answer. I don't see any new ones out of the gate here. So I'm going to move on to maybe a little lighter, more fun ending here. Like we've spent so much time focused on the back end of your inchworm, trying to get rid of all the crap. I want to give you some ideas of some things that you can be improving from a front end standpoint. And you can do this at any point once you've made, I think, enough progress in the back end to feel like you're in command of it, right? Because taking this on could be a distraction from that work. And it's going to be far more costly to make those mistakes again than it will be advantageous to you to improve yourself in this way. Because again, you only have so much energy, only have so much focus. But I want to just give you some ideas to plant some seeds as you are making some progress there about what you can be doing in the future to improve your A game. Number one, increase focus and mental endurance. So, I get questions sometimes of like, all right, well, is it possible to be optimally focused for, 7.5 hours during the trading day? I'm like, yeah, it is actually. There are traders that are able to do that. How do they get there? Well, they freaking trained for it, right? And some of them are young, sure, fine, okay. And they had training usually because they were very, very diligent in school. They were in sports. They were doing other activities before trading where they already had this sort of buildup or reservoir of strength to be able to focus and have that focus last at a high level for very long periods of time. But if you don't have it, can you improve it? Yes, you can. How are you going to do it? Treat it like a muscle, right? Measure what you're currently able to do. I can have great focus for 30 minutes and then I start to get tired. Fine. Okay. And what are you going to do? Well, once you get to 30 minutes, try to increase it by 10%. So now focus for 33 minutes. Sounds pathetic, right? Why can't I focus for an hour? Because that's 100% increase. You can't just go to the gym, lift, bench press 100 pounds and then bench press 200 the next day. Even if hypothetically you could, okay? Because we all know those Herculean efforts when, people see somebody pinned underneath a car and you're like, oh my God, just freaking pick up a car. Just move it. Yeah, okay. Is that sustainable? What does that person look like the next day? They're freaking destroyed, right? I've seen stories of what they're in pain. Sometimes they've just ripped tendons in their muscles. They're just like 9 months to recover. So yeah, you want to focus for an hour after you can do it for an hour? Sure. What's it going to cost you? You're done for the day. What's going to cost you tomorrow? Yeah, you probably could recover. It's not that much time. Point is, are you going to do it sustainably in a way that's actually going to build your endurance long-term? Then you got to do it practically. 33 minutes. Cool. All right. Take a break. 5 minutes. Can you do another 30 minutes? Yeah, you can do 10. Fine. 33 minutes, 5-minute break, 10 minutes. Great. Right. And you just figure out what your current capacity is and build them. Refine decision-making. Okay. Again, your decision-making process is your technique equal to my golf swing. Can my golf swing improve? Always. Can the golf swings of tour players improve? Always. Right? Why? Because they have a range. They have a C game. So yeah, you can find ways to fine-tune the decision-making process you make in the moment. And yeah, pour through it. Really look in very granular detail. I would say that most of you are not anywhere close to this process, to this place yet. But it's one that you can do in the future. Higher, more consistent energy, kind of related to the mental endurance thing. But the reason I kind of call it out is because I'm thinking more about the sort of things you do in your personal life outside of trading that supports that. So, focusing on better sleep, more exercise, nutrition, there's lots of things that can contribute to your energy. And the better that you have it, the easier it's going to be for you to be at your best. The access and use of intuition. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this one. But quickly, in the course, you have a bonus 37-page ebook that I wrote fairly soon after the Mental Game of Trading came out last year. It's in the course. I highly recommend you read it, even if you're not necessarily at a place where you can really be kind of trusting or utilizing intuition, which I'd say for most of you with less than 1 year of experience, like you should not be using intuition unless it's based on more like kind of macro factors. But from a trading standpoint, you need a base of knowledge in order to have intuition have anywhere close to being useful. But basically, I wrote this because it was just content that I wanted to put in the Mental Game of Trading, but it just never fit in a very clean way. And so, it just had to get put out somewhere. So here it is. It's kind of a companion piece to the Mental Game of Trading. So yeah, definitely check it out. But for now, one little nugget about intuition. Okay. Intuition is based on information that is so new, you can't consciously understand it yet. Right? That's what really defines intuition. Many of you will mistake this feeling like what is right, and it's actually coming more from emotion, right? I shouldn't jump into this position, or like I should close out this position. I know it's going to retrace. I should jump in here, even though it's hasn't kind of ticked all your boxes yet, because I just know that the market's going to take off here, and it's BS, right? It's fear, or it's anger, or it's something is masquerading as intuition. And it's not actually intuition. Okay, so a task that you can do right now that will help you distinguish intuition from the BS is to write down the distinguishing features of intuition. So when you have it, how do you know? Okay. One example, this is in the book, client who has this sort of more mental experience, pieces kind of coming together. It's like an aha moment versus tension in his chest versus emotion that is recognizable based on all the patterning that you've been doing already. So if it's not that, then like, what is it when you know that you're picking up on something so new you can't quite understand consciously yet? You can kind of create those distinguishing features. Then it just becomes a lot easier for you to know and recognize the BS from the gold. All right. So if we take all of these things together, what does it lead to? It leads to the zone. Okay. And so the zone, I think for a lot of people, feels like you can't control it. It's unpredictable. Some people call it flow, optimal experience, the peak of your mental experience, whatever. I don't care about terms. We just care about intent. Right? You at your absolute best, where your energy is ideal, your decision-making process is optimal for you at that time. There's obviously no emotions. You're able to handle things very easily, right? There's a very kind of zone flow-like quality to yourself. And you can create predictability around this thing. Now, if you have big emotional issues, that's going to be the thing that's going to take you out of the zone. You're not going to be able to get there consistently. But as that stuff starts to kind of wind down, you can create a zone profile, which is what this document is. And it's just kind of capturing kind of key elements that will help you to make it happen more often. Okay. So we start with a description of the zone. So here's an example: totally focused with no negative or noticeable positive emotions. Okay. Keyword, right? noticeable positive ones. So there's just like this sense of balance, right? You're not euphoric or getting ahead of yourself. I'm not thinking any negative thoughts. I treat success or failure equally. I don't allow either result to distract me from the next trade. Oh, typo here. There's a feeling of being able to predict with uncanny accuracy what the market is likely to do, where it will retrace, what it will target, and then being able to act on that with trades that results in a feeling of calm confidence. All right, so I purposely deleted the this person's goals and why, because I didn't want to. We talked about this a lot already. You just input yours here. It's not that complicated. Key factors. Okay, we have these 4 sections. Well, key factors. Zone routine. So the zone routine for me is more about like what additions to your routine are necessary in order for you to be more likely to get in the zone. Okay, you don't have to write down the whole routine, right? Why do you fall out of the zone? So this is like in real time, what's going to kick you out, and then what would keep you from the zone, right? And effectively kind of prevent you from getting there entirely. Okay, so I'll just kind of read through a couple points here. Key factors: diligently completing my pre-market work in terms of levels, areas of interest, blah, blah, blah. Well rested and clearly focused. Lack of emotional residue from prior sessions, and feeling very little need to force things. Okay, so we think of the zone almost like a mixture, right? Call it a cocktail or some kind of formula, right? You're just kind of adding these elements. And when we look at elite traders who are able to get there frequently, elite athletes or performers who are able to do it frequently, they have a mastery of the kind of dynamics in their own mind. And they understand that things are going to kind of move and days are different and challenges are different, but they understand kind of how to mix or adapt the formula based on those circumstances. And these key factors are kind of how you get to do that. Okay. And so then the zone routine becomes, again, a kind of another way to gain access to some of those adjustments you might need to make, right? You can kind of read through those. Some examples of why you'd fall out of the zone, right? Self-doubt after a few losses, boredom or distractions, greater overconfidence after closing bigger wins. One of the more common ones is being aware of being in the zone. Okay. If you are aware that you're in the zone, you're not in the zone. Okay. And so the pyramid analogy happens here. It's like when you become aware that you're like, oh my God, look at how great I'm doing. Right now, all of a sudden, you've got this sort of extra level of awareness. Why would that happen? Because your base of confidence is not wide enough to support you being that good, right? If it was unexpected, sorry, if that level was expected, it's not noteworthy. It's unexpected, and that's why you become aware of it. Lazy preparation when I start the session, more eager to jump into something, keep you from the zone, tired, confusion about the market. All right, so this document is in the course. It's in the task booklet. Yeah, we've created it as a task. Okay, you're not doing it for me. You're doing it for you. Just like reading that free ebook on intuition. But we're creating it as a task because why not? We can hold you accountable. Sure. All right. We're at the finish line, folks. Trading psychology masterclass recap. Post any additional questions you have now. Okay. I'm going to get to as many as I can. Okay. Overview of the system. Let's look at it here, folks. Step 1, mapping your pattern. These are your tools. Step 2, get to the root of your problem. Mental hand history. Dig that stuff out. And then what you do, work towards solving your problem so you eventually can reach resolution. And why is resolution so important? Okay, resolution is so important because you want to get to the point where you're no longer battling these things. Win the battle. And then they go away eventually, or win the war, however you want, whatever analogy, right? So these are your tools to help you to do that. All right, overview today, right? We're looking at the signs of progress, the importance of being able to measure and recognize that you are improving, keeps your motivation high, keeps your confidence high. And then if you're not making progress, like make sure that you're actually continuing to work the problem in the right way and not being diluted by it. Future issues, got a range of those that can occur. Okay. And then of course, the opportunity to improve your A game. All right. So what was your biggest takeaway from today? Improvements to your strategy, maybe the signs of progress, the potential for those future issues, or improvements to your A game or intuition. You can kind of post your thoughts in the chat. Share your biggest takeaway with all of us. I know, Carlos, I don't want it to end either, but stay tuned, folks, because there's going to be a small little asterisk on that one. Ellie, you're welcome. Psyched that you've learned a lot here. I'm going to get to your questions here. Signs of progress. Got 2 out of the gate here. Love it. Let's get to your questions as the takeaways pile in so rapidly. Signs of progress. Signs of progress. Treating focus as a muscle. Cool. All right. Signs of progress for the win so far. All right. To your questions. How do you personally become more present or mindful to yourself and the market during the trading day? So I actually have very, very strong feelings about this because there's just so much like advice out there about, they need to be present. You got to figure out why you're not present because they are ripping you out of that. Theoretically, it is impossible to not be present. Okay. I will explain this. If you're thinking about the past, if you're thinking about something else, if you're thinking about the future, when are you doing it? You're doing it in the present. Okay. So I know that's not exactly what they mean by being present, but I'm purposefully framing it this way because that's why that information or that advice tends to be a bit garbage. The game is not trying to get you to be more present. It is functionally impossible for you not to be present. You're always present. If you're thinking about the past, you're doing it now. Okay. The game is how much are you able to attend to what is happening in front of you? That's the question. You don't want to be present all the time. You can't make goals or a plan for yourself. You've got to think about the future. How are you going to learn from your past? You got to think about the past. So the game is how much can you attend and focus on what's happening in front of you? And then the question becomes, why are you not? Right? And that is really the way to address that more pragmatically. All right. So other takeaways coming through here. Realizing I have much more work to do, but I know where to go. Yes, that's what we want. Right? You know where to go. You know how to fix it. That to me is ideal, man. You're going to have stuff. That's just a constant. Framing confidence as a mismatch of actual skill versus perceived skill. Cool. Recognizing there needs to be time spent perhaps equally on the mental issues, not just the technical. Very nice. Future issues. And I particularly enjoyed the feedback from homework and answering questions. You're welcome, Vanessa. The importance giving to figuring out things in real time. All right. A few more questions here. And like I said, I will get to the little asterisks here. So hang on. Of course, if you got to go, make sure you come back to the recording and listen to this spot from here forward. All right. My problems patterns are clear to me, but I seem to have no clear idea the right approach to tackle them. One big problem is always hesitating to pull the trigger, which is results in missing the right buying and selling opportunities. I believe there are confidence and fear related, but I just don't know how to overcome. I tried for a long while. I just don't see much progress. Maybe trading isn't for me. I mean, I don't know. Maybe just give posts for a minute here. Are you new to this system? Some people have signed up late, which is fine. But my question really is how much have you worked through this system? Because if you're coming to the conclusion that maybe trading isn't for you, I would understand that if you've worked intensively for the last 8 weeks, but the way you're framing this suggests that hasn't happened quite yet, right? Because these issues, right, are all things I've talked about. The system is here; it will work for you, okay? But you've got to just put in the work and make sure you do that. And I think until that point, drawing the conclusion that trading isn't for you is a little bit premature. Give yourself a good opportunity, like maybe at this point, a couple months to work through the system and see if it can actually really work for you. If not, then I would suggest that the issues are probably a lot more personal. And even if they don't necessarily show up in your personal life, they just kind of run a bit deeper, and maybe you need to consult with a therapist to help you work through that. Again, even if it's not affecting your personal life, right? It's just sometimes trading just draws out deeper things that we didn't even know were there. All right, Mike, blew up 500K in 10 days. Couldn't help going back in and sizing up larger and angrier. Makes sense because provides max leverage, therefore fastest way to get back to black. Flawed because I can't think clearly after the kind of damage. Repeating the same thing more is likely to produce further damage. Yes. All correction statements feel no different than reminding myself most obvious realities, which has never made a difference. How do I make this more impactful? Well, because look, the only things you're talking about here are like how to suppress and prevent yourself from making the mistakes, but you're not understanding what emotions actually would have produced that in the first place. And so if you're trying to make things back fast, like where is that coming from? There's a deeper flaw, A, that you could do that. B, maybe there's overconfidence in here. You gotta dig deeper here. You're just scratching the surface. So all of the logic statements that you're saying here, to me, are not even going to get close. You've got to really understand like how that could have happened in the first place. Because right now you don't understand all of that. Carlos, when there's an issue for my personal life that just keeps circling in my brain, I can lose focus on the present. How can I remove that immediate thought process so I can 100% focus on current price action? Write it down with the intent to say, I will deal with that in the future. I cannot deal with that now. I can't do two things at once. So I have to choose. Are you going to deal with that thing or are you going to focus on trading? If it's going to be trading, then put it away, maybe pick a time. The other thing you can do again is in your pre-market prep before you start trading is to just like think about all of the personal stuff that you got to deal with. I know sometimes one will kind of slip through, it's like kind of the 5-hole in the goalie, right? One slips through, you get it. It just pops up, write it down, move on. Brian, firstly, thanks for the wealth of knowledge. You're welcome. I did it personally, me, and I can see myself improving constantly. Thanks. That's fantastic. Would you think after a month or so, once I've made enough refinements and lived through it for some time, consult with you one-to-one for a review? Sure. I mean, it's your money, it's your time. I've got spots open, at the end of the month. So yeah, if you wanted to do that, we certainly could. All right. Shiva, gut check, heartbeats, and adrenaline can be linked to excitement, fear, etc. Yes, definitely. Both, all the above. How to differentiate between intuition versus breaking trading rules, and then how to account for if intuition trade isn't profitable because not all intuition will be 100% profitable. Yeah, I think you got to create that differentiation. So I don't know exactly when this is posted relative to when I mentioned that, but if you haven't read the ebook, for sure do it because that's it's going to give you, I think, a wealth of perspective here. Are you able to give a little bit more detail on how that desperation issue from earlier in the webinar would be handled? I would like to, but there are literally 10 steps that I'm listing in the book. I could pull it up if you actually want to see it. Yeah, I'll do that. Give me a second here while I got to dig it out of my files.
And while you're doing that, Jared, I just want to take the time to thank everybody for the awesome interaction and questions, not just today, but really for the entire series. Really without you guys, this entire process and workshop wouldn't be possible. So both Jared and myself want to deeply thank all of you guys for participating. And a special thank you to everybody who is willing to come up here live. I know that's scary for sure, but hopefully I think that was especially helpful for you guys and also everybody involved. So definitely a huge thank you to everybody who came up into that and everybody who just participated in general, submitting worksheets, all of that. It really makes this whole thing a little bit more special. And I think this came out amazingly well. So thank you guys.
Yeah, 100% echo that, Richard. Like I said, from the beginning, we wanted to make this something that was going to be really impactful for all of you. And I think we've done a pretty good job of it. Mostly because of how much has come back. The deluge of homework that I've had to pour through has been intense, but worth it. I certainly have learned more ways of adapting my system. So here you go. Here's the mental game of trading, right? This is the section on desperation. Okay. So these are the fourth, I think there's 10, if I remember correctly. Maintain a sense of urgency. You got to map the desperation. Number 2, strict daily stop loss. This is non-negotiable. You got to book wins, right? And that's something that is painful to do, but it has to be done. You got to take regular breaks or use a timer to make sure you rip yourself off. Take aggressive action towards the early warning signs. Those early warning signs is a very slippery slope when we're dealing with desperation. recognizing small steps forward. Desperation is a confidence issue, so this is important for building confidence. Release the day-to-day accumulated emotion. You've got to have a really, really solid cool down. Correct self-criticism. A big cause of the desperation will keep that kind of snowball working if it's there. And then correct the fuck-its. Okay. And the fuck-its are where it's like, oh, okay, I've got, $500 in my prop account. So yeah, I'm just going to shove it in, or I got $500 left in my account, whatever you got left, or, I got $500 until my DLL today. Phone it. No, if you're going to start to gain control of this stuff, you have to be the one to stop it. The money that you earn is not going to get you out of it. Right. So that's got to be how it's happened. So obviously desperation is a confidence issue. So the confidence chapter is where you'd want to be hanging out. Can you please go over how did we do meditation? We talked about before. No, you just got to go back to webinar 4. It's there again. Just review it. That's why it's recorded. How much of the system can we apply to other factors of life, such as relationships, career, etc.? All of it. It's just a question. I think that the difficulty is the quality of the feedback. What's great about trading, just like in poker, is the frequency is really, really high, right? I mean, even golf. I work with professional golfers. Like, you all are playing like a tournament every day, right? They play 30 tournaments a year. It's like, holy crap, man. It's like, it's just hard to get the experience and the feedback. And we get into our personal lives, it gets even messier. So that's really the kind of the biggest challenge. It's just about getting the inputs to work into the system. But once you get those, I've heard of, I work with a radiologist. I work with lawyers, salespeople, people who are trying to get dates. And it's not the pickup artists, sketchy stuff. And we're just like people who are just trying to be better versions of themselves. So, all right. Let's see here. Not trading. Okay. Why I admire Albert Einstein. I mean, one of the smartest people ever. So even if just a 1% kind of gets into this room every day, I'll take it. As I find approach to mastery, I move into overconfidence, and then as a result, I make mental mistakes. I might multitask and then make errors. How to address it? You got to deal with take overconfidence as the problem. Right? This is exactly what we've talked about, right? So you're basically just getting ahead of yourself, and most likely it's that you probably think that you're done, right? That the work that you've done is going to allow you to inevitably continue to make progress, and there is no inevitability. Right. The only time you can guarantee that the momentum that you built up is going to be self-sustaining is when you actually achieve mastery, not approaching it, actually drive the car, being able to be on autopilot and be safe. Right. Ride a bike without falling. Right. That's what, once you achieve mastery, then you can move on. I have found that doing nothing, ability to just sort of stand back, is very important. There's only so many good stocks, right? Oh, the rest is a lot of noise. Cool. What's the best way to reach me for one-on-one stuff? Just go to my website, jaredtundler.com, or you can find me on Twitter. But yeah, just shoot me an email. There's email forms on my website that you can get to there. And I guess that is a note for everybody that's not on my website. I would say go sign up to my newsletter. There's just free content that I'm pumping out every month. I host an office hours monthly. And then there's always, kind of new blogs that are coming out. Just like an easy way to kind of stay engaged. Down the road, if we unknowingly not answer correctly on all of the worksheets, will that impact the quality and progression of our assessment, since we will be on our own at last? I mean, you're not going to know, right? I mean, I think it's the feedback. Like, if the progress stalls, that's kind of the biggest indicator, right? That there's something that's a little bit off and has to get looked at. If your progress is continuing, it may not be perfect, but it's clearly working. How did you guys meet? It was just, one day on the beach. As I recall, somebody had responded to Richard in a Twitter post about, who he should have on the podcast. And somebody had mentioned me. I said, yeah, I'm down. And we just kind of hooked up that way and had a couple interviews last year. And then Richard reached out saying, hey, we should do this. And I was like, that's a great idea. And so here we are at the end of it, I think 6 months later. So
very cute story.
Crazy how things work out.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, everybody. So here's the last sort of surprise here. Again, it's hard for me to say goodbye, and so this is kind of my way of not doing it. Feedback for me is really, really important, and so Richard's got to post in the chat a survey that is about the masterclass. I would really appreciate you taking 10, 15 minutes of your time to complete it. There's just a bunch of questions that will help me to be better at what I do, because I know I'm not perfect. As much as I appreciate all the feedback that has been really positive and all that, I know I can get better. And so feedback is great, and so it's just important to me to kind of know where we're at. So take some time to do that. As a thank you, mid-July, late July, we're going to schedule a follow-up Q&A that will be exclusive to anybody that fills out the survey, which means make sure you put your email into the chat. Into the chat, not the chat, into the survey. At the very end, you can put your email into the survey. Everybody that completes it will have an opportunity to join. It's not just people that are watching this live, right? You're watching the replay of this. The survey is going to be in the course. Okay. So complete the survey, and we'll see you in 7 or 8 weeks or so. Great to see all the good feedback here. Excitement for that. Yeah, mid-July. We just have to look at our schedules. I know Richard and Trader Line have a couple things going on, which if you want to mention, go for it. But we've got to just kind of get our schedules aligned. I've got a tournament that I'll hopefully be qualifying for. So there's all that. And so, at least for me, again, thank you all. It's been a lot of fun. It's been challenging. It's been a great learning opportunity for me. I appreciate all the hard work you all have put in. I wish you all very well in your continued progress here. You're going to go through ups and downs. Just keep at it, keep working on it. There are no quick fixes here, but eventually, you're going to find one that's going to feel quite remarkable. And when you do, make sure you give yourself a pat on the back and appreciate the work that it took to get there. And then take a nod and see what's next in store for you, because there's more to do. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye for now.
Well, just a second, Jared. Yeah. Before we say goodbye, I just want to say, Jared, without you and your preparation and hard work, this wouldn't have been possible. So on behalf of myself, the students, and everybody at Traderline, we really appreciate you helping us put this together. And I think it's been a tremendous success. I know I've learned a ton. So once again, just a huge thank you to you, Jared. And this has been an awesome experience. Thanks again to all the students. And that's pretty much it. Any last words, Jared, to everybody watching? No. Just keep working it. That's the only thing you can do. And I see somebody saying, masterclass 2. We got to figure out what that'll be. But yeah, I think we've for right now. I'm just gonna go play some golf and enjoy. So thanks, Richard. I appreciate that. And so it's been amazing working with you guys. You and everybody at Traderline. It's when you find good people to work with, everything gets easy. And so happy to be kind of hooked up with you guys here for this. So perfect. All right, everybody. Yeah, perfect. We'll leave it there. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great rest of your weekend. Take care.